Nandipha Magudumana's bail application was adjourned just a short while ago until tomorrow morning. They'll resume at 11 o'clock. She's appearing in the Bloemfontein Magistrate's Court. Now, Thabo Bester's partner in crime cried in court earlier this afternoon as her affidavit was being read out. In it, Magudumana told the court of how Bester forced her to leave the country against her will.
Albeit I have decided to exercise and assert my right to remain silent and not to disclose the basis of my defense until at the appropriate time and forum, I nevertheless wish to provide the following context to how I departed South Africa. 8.1. On or about the 17th of March 2023, I was in company of accused number 5. 8.2. I was instructed and commanded by accused number 5 to get into a vehicle and leave the premises to a destination unknown to me at the time. 8.3. I refused and wanted an explanation, but he forced me into a vehicle. 8.4. I succumbed to the pressure due to the threats he directed at me. 8.5. I was defenseless, helpless, and with no one to report to at that time. 8.6. I complied with his instructions and was taken out of the country against my will.
Okay, part of that emotional affidavit by Nandipha Magudumana in court earlier today. My colleague, the senior reporter Silindelo Masikane, inside court, keeping an eye on the proceedings in the Bloemfontein Magistrate Court. Let's go live to her now. Good afternoon, Silindelo. Well, it's done. That's day one of this bail application, resuming tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. What a day of drama, emotions being exhibited there by Nandipha Magudumana earlier. She was a little bit more composed this afternoon.
Yeah, certainly, Bradan. We saw a range of emotions from Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, but of course, in the beginning, looking quite nervous when we got into her affidavit being read into the record. We saw her getting a little bit more emotional, teary-eyed, and now, as we came back from the lunch adjournment, when the state presented its case in the form of an affidavit from the investigating officer in opposition of her bail application, I think I noticed a much more annoyed-looking Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, who seemingly was shaking her head at everything that was being read into the record, almost in disbelief at some of the evidence that was presented by the state prosecutor in the way of an affidavit by the investigating officer, who detailed a lot of what the state has established in terms of the alleged relationship between Bester and Dr. Nandipha, dating back to, from what we understand from that affidavit, 2006, where the IO says that Magudumana herself had stated that she met Bester while they were still studying at Wits, that he was studying theology, she was doing medicine. Later on, he then paid lobola for a customary marriage between herself as well as Bester, and ultimately detailing a lot of what we've heard in the media and seen in the media in terms of the escape plan, also labeling Magudumana as well as Bester as the masterminds of the escape. Now, I am going to bring in some legal analysis to unpack what we've heard so far, because we do know that Magudumana is facing Schedule 5 offences, meaning that the onus is on her to show the court why it's in the interest of justice, for her to be released. I'm going to bring in legal expert, Mr. Mpumelelo Zigalala. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's just get into what we saw in terms of Magudumana's affidavit itself, where she claims she is in essence a victim and was forced out of the country. Also stating that she doesn't want to get into the details around how she ended up in Tanzania, why she ended up in Tanzania, saying that she doesn't want this to be used against her in trial. What do you make of her affidavit?
Good afternoon to you and also to the viewers. I think we just got a glimpse of the defense which is going to be raised by the doctor, basically saying that I was coerced into engaging in this type of thing. I did not have the required intention to engage or to do such heinous crimes. So on that basis, I should not be found guilty. But from a point of view of a valid defense, I would have expected her when she came back, she would have disclosed all of these particular points to a legal defense team, and they would probably have opened the case of kidnapping against Mr. Bester if that's what she says she was coerced or forced to engage in something that she didn't want to be part of. But the mere fact that that has not been done up until this stage then says, how can we believe what you are telling us? It seems as if you are pretending as if this is your defense. Why have you not actioned it? Why did you stay in jail for this amount of months when you could have raised this defense much earlier on, even provided or made this bail application months earlier on? So yes, it may be a defense in law. However, it is not a defense maybe the court will be able to believe in, since it has taken quite a bit of time in order for her to action such. A reasonable individual in her position wouldn't wait for such a long time before she actioned, or maybe she discloses that I was actually kidnapped and did not have the intention of participating in this crime.
Looking at that affidavit and what we've heard from the state in opposition, what are her prospects of success? Because it does seem as though the state is trying to paint a picture of somebody who can evade justice, who can evade her trial, somebody who's in essence a flight risk.
I think the purpose of success are quite huge. Remember, it's a Schedule 5 of offense. Hence, it's just an affidavit which just have to be submitted. There are no exceptional circumstances that will be provided by Dr. Magudumana. So if you are able to cover the following points of saying that they will not endanger any public, I will not evade my trial, I'm not going to try to influence any witnesses, or even if I do know them, there are precautionary measures that can be there. And I'm not going to undermine the bail system or jeopardize the flow of justice as it is supposed to flow. And it must be noted, by the way, that there are sort of preventative measures that have been there used by the court in previous years, and even on a daily basis, to make sure that a person is able to live their lives, preserve their right to innocence as per Section 35, and still be able to attend trial on a regular basis. So you may find conditions which are going to say you have to report to your nearest police station maybe on a weekly basis. Don't leave this particular country without informing the investigating officer. Let's take away your passport and other travel and documents that are there. We are going to presume that you are still innocent. It's a right that has accrued to you and you can't take it away. So on those bases, I think she has quite covered the bases in terms of saying, this is my personal circumstances, and it's per Section 60 of the Criminal Procedure Act, right, with Section 35 of the Constitution. I qualify. It's in the interest of justice that I'm released. From the side of the state, though, I think they were trying so hard to then say, we cannot trust you because your case that we have against you, which is so strong according to the state, that you may have intentions or maybe try to evade trial because you know the consequences and type of sentences which you are going to get is going to be huge. So you may try and evade trial. So on that basis, you should not be allowed to be granted bail. But if it were to be me, being the presiding officer, I would grant bail, especially with strict conditions.
Let's talk then about the state wanting the court to note that Magudumana has a separate process that she is engaging in the Supreme Court of Appeal, where she's filed founding papers papers in order to try and get the SCA to declare her arrest and deportation from Tanzania declared unlawful as well as set aside. There did seem to be a moment where the state wanted her lawyers to kind of establish what's going on there and how, in essence, it may affect these bail proceedings. Talk to me about why it is then that we are seeing Magudumana continuing to pursue that particular angle, but also at the same time still wanting to apply for bail. There are questions around whether she has not legitimized her arrest by applying for bail.
Not necessarily. Remember, when you look at bail, it has nothing to do with the innocence of guilt of the individual. Section 6 is very prescriptive. It says, is it in the interest of justice that this person is released on bail? Can we impose conditions which are going to be able to protect the interest of both parties, the rights of the accused in this case, and also the interest of justice? So if you are able to put in those preventative measures, then all is well and all is fine. I think the state was trying to muddy the waters a bit. Whether you file a separate application or not, it has no bearing whatsoever in the assessment that has to be done by the court in this case. The court, it's very clear from its side look at what Section 60 of the Criminal Procedure Act actually says, look at the type of questions which are being asked, and if there's a likelihood that the person is going to evade trial, for example, and there are no preventative measures that are there, then you simply skip it out. You are looking at the moment a candidate who, as we speak, has no previous conviction. There's no other pending matters except the case in which she is in now. Has got children which are in South Africa, and she has tried to provide a defense of saying why would the person or a mother leave their children by saying that actually I was coerced. At a later stage, I can come up with a defense. I'm not entitled or coerced or required to disclose it now. But I'm just giving you a glimpse of the type of defense that I can be able to raise at a later stage. So she has been able to prove that I'm a perfect candidate and I can't be trusted, and it's in the interest of justice that I saw be released. So the introduction of this information, I think, from the side of the state was just to muddy the waters. It has no burden whatsoever in this case which is happening here. Yes, it does have the impact of trumping the whole case at a later stage, but for purposes of these proceedings and for purposes of what the presiding officer in this court will have to look at, it has no burden at all.
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That is legal expert Mr. Mpumelo Zikalala, just unpacking what we've seen transpiring on day one of Dr. Nandipha Magudumana's bail application. Like you stated, Bradan, we resume tomorrow at 11 o'clock, where we are expecting closing arguments in this bail application.
Thank you very much. Silindelo Masikane inside the Bloemfontein Magistrate Court, just wrapping up what happened today in Nandipha Magudumana's bail application.